Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course, and we're pleased to be joined by Bob Pockrass of FOX Sports, of course, covers NASCAR. How's it going, Bob?
It's going great. Getting ready for the Daytona 500. So ready to kind of had a taste of kicking off the season at the Clash at the Coliseum, and now getting ready for an exciting Daytona 500 week. Got a chance to, actually bump drivers out with the
Yeah,
duels and some, got some big names. So that'll make Wednesday, and Thursday night pretty exciting.
yeah.
And then you got all the races during the weekend. Should be fun.
Okay, so let's start with the Daytona 500, and of course, with coming off the Clash and all that stuff. What are we going to expect this year? Do we do? Because I think as of my count, we're at 42 right now. We expecting any more entries?
Well, as we're talking on Thursday afternoon, I would say, potentially will Team Hesselberg or Josh Rayum, who runs that team, will they field a car? That's still kind of the question mark. Josh obviously had the fire in his truck shop, but the Cup cars were not in there, so they were in a different shop. So they do have those cars. Obviously, I would think they would need to have at least one of those updated from last year, but they still have not yet announced whether they will go to Daytona. So that could be a 43rd, but obviously you've already have 42 confirmed entries.
Right. Also looking into, coming up this season, of course, we have all these, of course, the big news earlier this week is that Front Row Motorsports announced that Zane Smith's going to be running some cup races and it's going to share the 38 with Todd Gilliland. What's that going to be like, that drivers sharing cars? And because apparently a lot of people are talking about what potentially Zane Smith could do next year too.
Well, for sure. I mean, Zane Smith has a multi-year contract with Front Row, so Front Row would certainly like to keep him. But I think everybody also knows that Zane Smith is a hot prospect. So will somebody try to buy that out if he continues to perform the way he has performed? I think Front Row knows, they've kind of used Zane Smith as a big part of their future, though, and they want to get him some cup races because if he, kind of assuming he will go full time in 2024, nothing's set, but that's kind of the way you read everything as happening. You'd want him to have some races under his belt. So he'll share that. He'll get, he'll do the Daytona 500 in the 36 and then do another 6 cup races in the 38. I remember seeing pictures of Todd Gilliland's wedding party and Zane Smith is in it. So, as Zane Smith said, it's been a little bit awkward, but I think everybody knows that's the business. And I even saw Josh Rayum actually reach out to Todd Gilliland on social. They are a Ford team, so potentially, if could Todd run those cup races he doesn't run for Front Row for Josh? I think kind of remains to be seen. But I know they're working on something for Todd.
What are some big storylines that heading into with the Cup Series season, and just kind of talk about what are you most looking at heading toward 2023, because there's a lot of big things that are going to be happening this year, especially with the Chicago Street Course, and of course potentially drivers getting moved around, because apparently that could start anytime.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing you're going to look at is Kyle Busch at RCR, right? And how does he perform? He certainly had a strong performance at the Clash. Tyler Reddick at 2311 Racing. I think those two drivers will be, a lot of people will be watching and comparing them. And then you have, as you mentioned, the Chicago Street Course is new. You have North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race is new. I think those two events, a lot of people have circled on their calendars as kind of must-see TV for those. And I think the other things that you'll be looking at this year, obviously the safety of the car is people are going to be watching to see if the NASCAR's changes have helped drivers absorb less impact on the crashes that they have to the rear of the car into the wall. And then, as you mentioned, you got silly season. It could be very wild or it could be very calm. I think you look at some of the top drivers, and will Ross Chastain leave Trackhouse? Doubt it. Will Alex Bowman leave Hendrick? Doubt it. So I think the biggest question is kind of who drives the four. who drives that 4 car, because there isn't, I wouldn't say anybody who you would say, wow, that they can get, who's going to be kind of an immediate impact player. So then do they try to get, one of the younger drivers coming up? I don't know. Or do they even, potentially go to another series and see if there's a veteran who might be interested in NASCAR? I think that might be, if they really want to make a splash, that might be the way to go. But of course, then you're not talking about likely immediate results in 2024.
Right. Um, where are we at in terms of the car, and obviously issues with the next gen car, and with the rear clips and all that stuff? Where is NASCAR at in that? Have they kind of fixed those issues, or is it still a work in progress?
Well, I mean, I think it's always a work in progress, and you won't know if the issues are fixed until you see drivers back the car into the wall and see that, how they feel afterward. And a lot of people point to the clash and saying, well, drivers had headaches and were uh, complaining about, how hard the hits were, but the changes weren't designed to change the impact of bumps, and that's what was and that's what was happening at the clash. You were hitting the car in front of you and you were getting hit from behind and you were getting jostled all over. So and I don't think that you'll see another race like that. But of course, at Daytona, you'll have some bump drafting, and I think the question is, how much of an impact will that be on drivers? NASCAR is working on some potential changes to the front clip, front bumper area. They've done some testing on it. They need to feel like they need to do a little more testing, and when that could be implemented is kind of a TBD kind of thing. But they are looking at it. I think the first thing they were trying to do during last year was to change the rear clip and center section, which they did to make it more crushable, yet not impact the fuel cell. And that research was, took a good 4, 5, 6 months. They were working on it as all the drivers were complaining about it, and they just weren't saying they were working on it. Why, I don't know, but that was kind of the way they went about it.
Yeah. Also, I know that there's been talks. I think I've saw some reports that Toyota and maybe even Ford could potentially be trying to get more teams out on the grid next season. Have you heard any big manufacturer switches for next year?
Well, I mean, I think Toyota, says they want more teams. I don't know that Ford really would need more teams than what they have. Obviously, if Toyota took a Ford team, maybe Ford would have some interest. Although I think with Ford being in F1 and going into F1, I don't know that they're going to be looking to spend more money in NASCAR. I think, I think the hope is that hopefully at least they continue to spend the money that they are spending now. So, I think Toyota's looking at if they can add, a car or two from another team, that they would like to do it. Does that mean JTG Daugherty? They kind of flirted with front row there a couple of years ago. I don't see them going back and having more conversations there. But I don't. I'd be mildly surprised if we're talking like a major team move, such as a Team Penske or a Stewart Haas, at least right away.
Right. Also, I know there was this conversation of obviously Auto Club will not be back in 2024, and there's been a lot of talk on social media that the LA Clash could possibly be a points race in 2024 or in the future until Auto Club gets the short track design. Is that a possibility that we could see?
Well, I mean, anything's a possibility, right? I just think there's a lot of challenges for that. How do you give points when, I mean, I don't think anybody thinks they can put 40 cars out there or even 36 cars out there for a main event. How would you do that? How would you have, real pit stops, or at least the ability to change a tire quickly there, because, there are no pit stalls. Would they be able to bring fuel down into the middle of the bowl? Like there's just all sorts of things that are just that, why ruin what's a great of what seems to be still kind of a great event, a spectacle, with the challenge of trying to make it a points race. I just, look, again, anything is possible, but I think there's a lot of challenges there. And if they do it as the Clash and that suffices as your LA market race, I think that's okay. And then where can you put another points race for a year or two? Does it go to a NASCAR owned track, which California is? So, do you add a second race at Michigan? Uh, do you? I mean, I'd be surprised if like they reopen Chicago, right? Because they have the Chicago Street Course. But there could be some options. Do they go Road America again? I don't know what they want another road course, but they certainly have some options that they can do. Do they go to Homestead, right? Because with it being the second race of the year, that would kind of be a natural, hey, warm weather spot too.
Right. Do you see any changes to the charter agreement anytime soon, or to obviously the TV rights are up this year, up in 2024. Do you see any changes there?
Well, I mean, I think the charter agreements are up after 2024 as well.
Yes.
And, I think obviously there's going to be some changes just because whenever you renegotiate something, you're going to have some changes. Now, will teams get more than what the teams have told NASCAR kind of what they would like to see in that deal, and they'll negotiate. And where they come out, I don't know. I think the teams potentially could get a little more money. I don't know that they'll get all that they're asking for, and obviously it all depends on what the TV rights are and how that deal ends up, and I can't really obviously working for Fox, I can't really give much insight
Oh,
on that because even if I was just to speculate about it, people would consider it coming from Fox. So you'll have to ask us some other people about the TV deal, Casey.
all right. Also going into this off season, of course, we had all the big changes and all that stuff. Where are we at with with Xfinity and trucks heading into this year?
Well, Xfinity will have they changed the rear end housing on Xfinity this year,
Yeah.
so that they won't be looking like they're crabbing down the straightaways.
Yeah.
Now, will that impact how who's good and who's not? I think there's some question and debate on that. Will it impact, what Junior Motorsports was able to do? Maybe, but I certainly think that the cars handle differently. And they did a test at Charlotte, and I think everybody who did that test at Charlotte will be much better prepared for California and Vegas than those who didn't. Because the cars do drive differently, they do handle a little differently. As far as the trucks go, I don't see as much of a difference or a change, except that you're going to see a big Craftsman logo across the windshield. Kind of what's old is new again.
Right. Is there any potential, new teams that we could be seeing in the Cup Series in 2024, or no?
I mean, I think it's too early to tell. I just, especially, I just think, yeah, I would say it's too early to tell whether you have any new Cup teams in 2024.
Okay. And then just, coming into, with the Daytona 500 kicking off NASCAR's, 75th season, what's the biggest things that, I know we touched on this a little earlier, but what are some of the big things that you're most looking forward to this season, being it is the 75th season and kicking off on Fox?
Yeah, I think that I think whenever you have an anniversary, there's going to be a lot of celebration of the history of the sport. We'll have lots of debates on who were the greatest drivers. I'm sure you'll see some. They've already started some 75 greatest driver lists.
Yeah.
Who should be on that, who currently will be on that. So I'll enjoy some of that debate. Obviously, when you talk about the history of the sport and the 75th anniversary, I don't think you can look past the return of North Wilkesboro and what that will be like, kind of NASCAR's field of dream moments for the All-Star race. So that's what I would be looking forward to from a historical perspective.
All right. Well, Bob Pockrass, I know you got a lot of things to do before you head to Daytona next week. Enjoy the Super Bowl, which is also on Fox this week as we get ready for the 65th Daytona 500.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Yeah, just looking forward to it. All begins with Wednesday night qualifying on FS1 and all through the weekend on FS1, and then Sunday all on Fox.